Hello and welcome to an absolutely seething Two and Under podcast tonight in Australia. I'm Jack, I'm still pretty seething, and I've got Bobby there in Ballarat. How are you doing, Bobby?
Yeah, not too bad, Jack. Still pretty pissed off at the non-decisions given to us, but we'll carry on.
So we're going to review the Chelsea game, which was on in the middle of the night last night here in Australia. And just because we didn't have enough sort of anger and disappointment on the podcast today, we thought we would get Sharpy back, the Everton fan. Welcome back, Sharpy.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it, mate.
How's it going?
Yeah, great. It's good fun being an Everton supporter at the moment.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the Chelsea game first, and then we're gonna preview the Everton game, which is it's another one that's on Friday morning Australia time. So the tables have turned a little bit since the last time we had you on about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and we've kind of gone in opposite directions a little bit. So we will get into that a little bit later. But first, let's talk about the Chelsea v Newcastle game. So what I want to really talk about first here is the backdrop to the game and the context that this was in, because a lot of the national journalists got very, very excited in the UK about this because of everything that's going on with Russia and with Abramovich at the moment. Chelsea are obviously having their difficulties, and we don't really know how that's going to play out. But yeah, there was a lot of talk about the sanctions and how that's going to impact Chelsea. But then there was also, as a product of that, with this game particularly, it was the focus again on the Saudi Arabian ownership of Newcastle. So you had a lot of the national journalists kind of drawn attention to the Saudi ownership again. And just as a few examples, you had Oliver Holt, who said it was the game that turns my stomach. I don't think it stopped him going to the game, but there you go. That was what he thought about that. You had Tariq Panja, who asked Eddie Howe, who's a football manager, by the way. He asked him his thoughts on the 81 people executed in Saudi Arabia, which was in the news. You had Barry Glendinning, who does one of the podcasts, suggesting that Eddie Howe should condemn the Saudi regime or resign. And then you had Luke Edwards, well known to Newcastle fans. He pointed out that pretty fairly that Saudi is a political and military ally of the UK and of the USA. And he said you can support the team, Newcastle, but not leap to the defense of the Saudi regime. So I think that's quite fair enough. But we're going to get into this, but I don't see that many people who actually do defend the regime anyway. I don't see many Newcastle fans saying stoning gay people's fine and, executing people's all right. I just don't see that. So there's this narrative that's coming through here. But I do think it's really important to address this because it's something that is going to keep on going. And there are very valid questions that are asked about kind of football ownership and who should be allowed and who shouldn't be allowed to own football clubs, which are, historical community assets at the end of the day. So, Bobby, I'm going to ask you this question. How do we discuss and address this as a fan base without being accused of whataboutery, which is one of the favorite words of people in this topic? And is it possible to condemn the actions of the Saudi state, but while continuing to support Newcastle?
Yeah, so this grinds my gears a bit with the national press asking a football manager to talk about the 81 executions happening, a political landscape, and then when he says, I just want to talk football, going at him again because he didn't give an opinion on something. This regime and taking over of Newcastle with the Saudis is going to shine a greater light, as we are seeing. We're seeing now that every football fan knows about the 81 executions. We're getting this light shone. Now, as Newcastle fans, our job is not to condemn. We can't support it and not be with it, but we can't be the ones to defend a regime when we don't have any control over what goes on, the politics of it. It's just ridiculous to keep coming back to this point. As Adam Peacock said in our chat, what do they want us to do? Do they want us to walk away from our club because of a situation that may or may not be related to our owners. So for me, there's hypocrisy everywhere as well. Miguel Delaney is the biggest person out there, the biggest journo who's shining a light on his hatred of Saudi. But when the Saudis bought Manchester United or sponsored Manchester United, he was in the corporate box living it up. His paper is owned by a key ally of Putin, but he doesn't speak about that. But when it comes to Newcastle and the Saudi ownership, it's all about that. So your question to me is, as a football fan, I concentrate on the football. I'm going to give Eddie our answers here. I don't support what the Saudis do, but I don't know enough about what the Saudis do because I'm a football fan. So I'm hoping that what this ownership does is shine a light on all the bad stuff, and we can start changing what the Saudis do in terms of, hey, that's not right. But to get involved and to have an opinion and to walk out on Newcastle United isn't going to happen. So I wish the national press would just back off and attack the people that need to be attacked, and that's PIF or the Saudi head of state.
Yeah. It's directing questions to the right people, isn't it? I get it. I get why Eddie Howe has asked that question, but he's said consistently he's there to concentrate on the football, and then he's got journalists telling him he should resign about it. It's not realistic. I think my view about this is I don't mind people criticizing Saudi Arabia. In an ideal world, Saudi Arabian money would be nowhere near a football club. But we're not in an ideal world. The Premier League has accepted all sorts of dirty money from all sorts of corrupt or morally questionable regimes since the very beginning. And as you said, Bobby, walking away is just not an option. We don't have a say in who owns the club. We can think that beheading people, that stoning gay people, that human rights abuses are bad, while at the same time desiring success for our football club, because we had absolutely no say in this takeover whatsoever. Like you said, the fans are there to support the team, not to analyze geopolitics or defend the actions of nation states that might be stuck in the dark ages. What's Kev from Biker or Sheila from Jesmond or even Jack from Prudhoe? What have we got to do with what happens in Saudi Arabia? Why does the fact they've taken over our club mean that we should somehow be expected to walk away from the club? It's not feasible and it's not realistic. The manager and the players are there to coach and to play football. And the issue is with the relentless pursuit of money, no matter the source. And that's the problem. And that's effectively what Ollie Holt's article said, which I agreed with the bulk of it. But it's the digs at the fans as if they somehow expect us to do something or be able to do something to change this, We're not the ones who want Russian oligarchs or the UAE or Saudi Arabia to buy football clubs. We would want them to be locally owned ideally, but football has just gone way beyond that. The amount of money involved, like you have to be taken over by a nation state to have any chance of being successful. And that's not our fault. That's the fault of people who are in control of football. And like you said, Bobby, my big problem is the hypocrisy. I'm sitting here and I know that I'm a hypocrite because Saudi Arabia, Newcastle are owned by a country whose values are very different to what my values are. But I've made my peace with that because I've got no say in it. And I've put 30 years of my heart and soul into this club. So I'm not prepared to stop now just because some rich guys have taken over the club, which I had nothing to do with. So it is important to know that we're going to get these questions. It's important to highlight the bad things that do happen, but there's only so much football fans can do, and it's never going to stop us from supporting our club. It couldn't, the current owners are custodians of the club, and we'll be here long after they've gone, no matter what happens. Sharpy, I don't know what you think about anything you've heard there. Everton have had their own kind of issues with ownership lately. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree with you boys in terms of you're a supporter of a club. It's very much out of your hands or out of your control in terms of who the owners are. It doesn't mean that just because someone buys your club and you talk to someone with a lot of money coming in and buying your club, just because that's a club you've supported for all your life and you continue to support them and want them to do well on the pitch, doesn't now mean that you support that particular owner and their morals and their values. It doesn't align, and the people that assume that it does, they're just ridiculous.
And what's going on with the Everton ownership? Because Usmanov, who was involved with Arsenal at some point down the line, he's a Russian oligarch. He's presumably got ties to kind of Putin somewhere down the line. So how far do you go with it, and where do you sort of draw the line? What's going on?
He's got close ties to Mashiri, and Mashiri was, I think, on the board at Arsenal as well, and they're quite chummy, I believe. And fortunately, Usmanov hadn't actually come on in any official capacity. However, he had started to financially support the club in different ways through different companies that he owned. And so we've since basically wiped all of those sponsorships. To what level, and I don't know exactly how it looks, but we've wiped them for the time being. So how we go about finding those funds to replace that, I don't know. But at least we were proactive in taking that step and showing the support to the Ukraine and young Mikolenko at our club.
Yeah. Football finance just stinks, doesn't it, Bobby?
This is what I mean. I mean, the journalists are attacking the wrong people. Why don't you go back 20 years and attack the people, the custodians of the game, who allowed this money to filter in and change the landscape from your Newcastles and Liverpools and your these teams being community owned, and a local rich guy had the keys to the team and did it with the support of the fans. And now you're right, you need to be state owned to be competitive. So the attack on the fans, on the current manager, it's just bizarre, and it's a thing that it gets frustrating because I don't comment on it too much. I just, I don't handle it. But it's been ramped up lately, particularly because of what's happening with Chelsea. And it's amazing these journalists were very quiet. When we were angry with Ashley, and whilst, look, I'm not comparing Ashley to the Saudis. You saw about how, he did some dodgy things. All ownerships do. There's a lot of Chinese ownership and American ownership that are very, what's the word?
Questionable.
Yeah, that's questionable. But it seems to be Newcastle and our newfound wealth that's got a lot of people rattled. Little old Newcastle up in the north can't be competitive. They're not allowed to be. So let's barrel them. And as you say, in a perfect world, we'll all be community owned, fan owned. Germany's got a good model. I'd love that, but we're not. And so the journalists need to attack the people that allowed this to happen.
Yeah, and I think with football fans, they know that football fans are going to get defensive. When a football fan feels like their club is under attack, it doesn't matter which club you support. If you feel like you're under attack from outside, you're gonna jump on the defensive. So, like I said, I have not seen any Newcastle fans defending the Saudi Arabian regime. Newcastle fans don't know anything about the Saudi Arabian regime really, other than what comes out in the news. So we just need to be mindful that this is going to happen a lot. The Ollie Hull article actually even admitted that Manchester City have got away with things a little bit because they play beautiful football. It actually said that in the article, So it's like, what can you do about it? I think we just need to know that we're going to get attacked. And well-known Newcastle fan Mitch, the Geordie dentist, actually did a really good thread the other day where he was just explaining that just because we don't respond to something doesn't mean we condone it or agree with it. And like you said, Bobby, who's got the energy to argue and fight back against us all the time? And I don't think personal abuse of journalists is warranted. They're doing the job. But yeah, we need to be prepared for a lot more of this as the years go by, I think
it's going to keep coming. It'd be interesting to see if the Saudis bought Arsenal or bought Manchester United if the same level of vitriol by national press would have been around. I have my doubts. But taking away all that, I don't know enough about the Saudi regime. I don't agree with them. I don't support what they do. But I haven't delved in and spent hours researching. You know, I was when they were going to take over the ownership, we got hit with the James Khashoggi, whatever his name is, the journalist that got
Khashoggi.
Khashoggi that got killed by the Saudis, and then you're hearing different stories on that. You know, he worked for the Taliban, or he did. I don't know. I'm not into geopolitics. I don't know about the Saudi Arabian regime. So why do you want to attack me?
And nor should you have to as a football fan. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right.
And nor should you have to stop supporting your club because something that you've had no control over has happened. We're going to move on from this in a minute, but I did start looking out of interest at the war in Yemen that's going on, and it's Saudi led. It's backed by a lot of other countries in that region, including the United Arab Emirates. And while the UK government is supplying arms, you know, this could be classed as whataboutery, but it is. You can't talk about this without pointing out the fact that the UK government are supplying arms for this conflict. And maybe just because it's not on the news in the way Ukraine is, it's out of sight, out of mind a little bit. That's the kind of the way of the world. We see what we see through the media in the Western countries or in Australia. So yeah, it's very, very complex, and we've kind of had quite a long time, months now, to think about this, because it was hard to kind of get our thoughts straight, I think, at the time about what it all meant. But whenever something like this comes up, it's gonna keep going, and it's gonna be something that we do have to think about, I think, as a fan base, and that's fine. I get that, but let's just have a little bit of fairness and balance from the people who are reporting it to a wide audience. I think that's what I would say about that. So after all that, there was actually a football match that went on in that context. So Newcastle travelled to Stamford Bridge, which is somewhere that we never ever do very well. We've won once, I think, in 28 attempts, which is about standard. We usually just go and roll over and have our bellies tickled. But let's just talk a little bit about the game. Bobby, let's have a look at the starting lineup for Newcastle. This when I saw this, I was a little bit concerned, but maybe not necessarily too surprised because of the amount of games we've had over a short period of time. But yeah, talk us through the lineup, and then we'll get into the talking points of the game. Yeah,
as you said, I wasn't too surprised with a few changes for the Chelsea game. I said on the podcast previewing the Brighton game that the 4 away games, or the 3 in really quick succession, will mean that a lot of players are rested because of the fact that fatigue comes in. Sports science, they'll know their bodies, and we've had a few bits of illnesses run through the camp as well, which didn't help. So, when you're looking at that team, you're thinking, oh, God, we're going to park the bus here and it's going to be 90 minutes of bombardment. And, if we can hold on, it'll be good. It played out that way, but it wasn't to be that way during the game. But I thought my confidence in what Eddie Howe does and whoever's on the pitch, it's not about the players anymore. It's about the system and what he can do. And he's improved every single one of these players now. So your initial thoughts when you see the teams, like you go back to the Steve Bruce days and go, oh, my God, have a look at that team. But then you think, no, Eddie Howe's here and he's improved everyone and he knows the system to play. And for 89 minutes, we were the better team.
Yeah, it wasn't even really just the Steve Bruce. It was Benitez as well. I think Benitez used to completely park the bus. Benitez is somebody Sharpy knows about as well. But yeah, he used to completely park the bus in games like this. Even in home games, he did it against the quality sides. And so you do have that kind of reaction where it's like, right, we're going 5 at the back. We're going to have 4 midfielders, and we're just going to be knocking it long to Chris Wood. And we did only have 27% possession in the game, but it certainly didn't feel that way because there was a lot of very kind of coordinated, high energy pressing going on. and we were pressing them into mistakes. And they didn't have any shots on target until kind of the 75th minute. So it was a very, very good performance, considering that team, and also considering the fact you've got 7 first-team players missing from this team as well. So we had Trippier out. We've got the 3 Joes in midfield all out of this. We had Wilson, Fraser, and then Fraser and St. Maximin were on the bench, and they would usually start. So they both came on, but didn't have that much time to impact. So this was a really depleted Newcastle. And just for a little comparison, I just want to go and have a look at Chelsea's bench. And so let's look at Newcastle's bench. So there's 2 goalkeepers there. There's Paul Dummett, there's Matt Ritchie, there's Kraft, there's St. Maximin and Fraser, Dwight Gale, who can't get a game, and then there's a youngster, De Bol. So that's Newcastle's bench. So let's just have a little look at Chelsea's bench. You've got a £75 million goalkeeper on the bench. You've got Thiago Silva, an absolutely world-class defender. Alonso, brilliant left-back. Barkley cost 20 million or something. Or he was on a free, but he would have cost that. Kovacic, who's a quality player. Loftus-Cheek. Sal, who's on loan from Atletico Madrid. Pulisic. Oh, and then you've got Lukaku as well. There's just an £8 million striker on the bench as well. So I just think that it kind of demonstrates the challenge that Newcastle were up against here, and how well we did in the game. We were the better team. And let's just get into it then. We're going to have to talk about this. Right, so the game's quite even. Newcastle are doing pretty well. We've had a few chances. Chelsea have not really had much in the way of attacks. We'll talk about the first VAR incident. I'll probably take this one, Bobby, and then I'll ask your view on it, and then you can take the next one. So Kai Havertz is a Chelsea striker, and there's a ball up towards Big Dan Burn, and Havertz has basically elbowed him full in the face. The question here is whether it was intentional. How do you prove intent? What I do know is that Dan Burn came out with a massive bloody eye, which shows that it was a really bad bit of serious foul play. He ended up on the ground for a long time. This is a 6'7" defender. He's a big guy. He doesn't go down easily. He's pretty hard. With this one, I can understand why the referee didn't send him off for this, because it was a ball that he had every right to go for. So I remember the last time we played against Everton, Frank Lampard was talking about an orange card where it's between a yellow and a red card. I think this one could have been a red card quite easily. And if it had gone to VAR, I don't think VAR would have overturned it. But VAR did go to VAR, but VAR didn't want to overturn this from a yellow to a red card. Given what happened later, it's worse, because there was another VAR decision which was disgraceful, which we're going to talk about, and then Havertz went and scored the winner in the 89th minute. So I'm not as angry about this one as I am about the other one. What do you think, Bobby?
I think Dan Burn summed it up himself post-match. If that was me and I did it to the opposition, I would have got a red card. It's simple as that. I mean, for me, intent can be taken one or two ways. The referee's come out and said he didn't have his eye on Dan Burn, so that's why I didn't give him a red card. Dan Burn's 10 foot fucking tall. He got hit on the temple. Kai Havertz's arm or elbow was pointed in that direction. How it's the most unnatural position for an elbow to be, and it's a swinging arm. I don't understand how you can have an elbow in that position, whack a bloke, create a bubble in his forehead, and not be sent off. For me, I'm not as angry as the other one, because the other one was ridiculous. So I mean, I understand that you're saying you're not as disgusted as what the other decision was, but this one, for me, it was a simple red card. And VAR, we'll talk about the next one. It's not VAR's fault, and I'm getting tired of people blaming bad decisions on VAR. It's the people they've got using this technology that have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And, you know, they've probably not played the game properly at a high level. I think it's time we actually consider getting people that played the game at a high level to sit in these positions that aren't referees, but are monitoring from afar.
It's not technology, because technology is operated by humans. That's what we're saying, isn't it? But why did this one not? Why did the VAR, whoever the ref was on VAR, why did they not say to the ref, why don't you just go and have a look at that and see what you think? Because that guy's got a big cut on his eye. He's taken an elbow to the face. Why don't you go and just have a look at that and see what you think? Why didn't that happen in this situation, Bobby?
Because it's Chelsea. It's simple as that. I don't know. Like, I don't know why they didn't do it. Like, I don't understand the decisions. It's been going on for a while, and not just Newcastle. So this is not a Newcastle thing, or woe is us, we get all the bad decisions. We'll come back to Sharpy, because I'm sure, well, I know that they've had a bad decision now and again. It's the people that operate it seem to not want to give controversial decisions against the top 6 teams or that powerful European Super League teams for whatever reason, and it continually happens. So that the fact that VAR didn't call the ref over to have a look at it, it just blows my mind, to be honest.
I think it's pretty fair to say that if it was the other way around, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I don't believe that there's corruption. I don't believe there's active corruption. I just think that, like you said, there's too much evidence now for there not to be some kind of maybe unconscious bias towards the elite clubs, and the decisions that they keep getting. Sharpy, we will bring you in a bit, because I know Everton have had an absolutely disgusting VAR decision in the last few weeks. But Bobby, let's talk about the second one then. I'm just going to hand it over to you here. Off you go.
We've got the richest league in the fucking world, the best league in the world, but we can't get the best referees or the best people to run the rules in the league. Continuously, a blatant penalty. There's no other decision. There is no other fact. Is that a foul or is that not a foul? It's as simple. You look back on it, and the referee is out of position because he's walking. You go back, he couldn't see because he had 4 players because he was lazily walking. But then VAR's there for that purpose. Hey, mate, we can see that you probably missed it being crowded out by 4 people or 4 players blocking your view. But just have a look on the screen and see what you think. The bloke's getting tugged. That wasn't the first instance. It happened earlier. Then the serious tug happens about there, inside the box. And the bloke keeps going, tugging his shirt until he puts his leg out and gets Murphy to fall over. Anywhere else on the football field, it is a foul. Anywhere.
It's 3 fouls. I think it's 3 fouls.
But VAR decided not to even get the ref to have a look at it. It's blatantly disgusting. And I'll go back to it. When I say VAR, I mean the people controlling VAR. VAR has brought us these pictures that you can clearly see that there's a penalty or there's a foul. Forget about the penalty. It's a foul. So VAR has brought us these images, but the people controlling it didn't see fit to tell the ref, hey, mate, just go cast your eyes on this and see if you think it's a foul or not. It is absolutely disgusting. And I was at my wit's end when I saw it.
They gave a corner kick for this. So what that says is that the referee thinks that the defender has touched the ball and kicked it out for a corner, right? So that's obviously what the referee thinks, because that's the decision. So the VAR is looking at that, and then the VAR can see, the person operating the VAR can see that the defender didn't touch the ball. He didn't really get anywhere near the ball. And not only that, he's already been tugging Murphy's shirt all the way from just outside the box in the first place. So it didn't again, why didn't they say to the ref, just go and have a look at it? But why didn't they say at least say to the ref, well, he didn't, the defender didn't touch it, so it can't be a corner? Or is VAR not allowed to? They're not allowed to say that? Are they purely just assessing? I don't know the answer to this. Are they purely just assessing the potential foul? So they're not looking at whether he got the ball or not, which for me is part of the foul anyway. But I was even confused, and I was having to ask people after the game, did this even go to a VAR check or not? Because if it has, how on earth have they not at least said to the ref, go and have a look at it?
Don't ask me. Don't
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just dumbfounding. We've seen a few of these bad decisions happen, and they're all baffling. This is the second worst decision I've seen that's happened against us. I still maintain the Edison takeout of Ryan Fraser at St. James is the worst, but this is it's deplorable, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop for all these teams that aren't in the top six that get these poor decisions that cost you relegation.
Yeah.
Like, the simple fact is it could cost you relegation, and we're relying on these absolutely boneheads that don't know what's going on to keep continually getting these decisions wrong.
So we've had a really bad decision against Man City. There was one against Liverpool a couple of games before that, there was two actually in that game, which was pretty dodgy. Sharpy, over to you. Everton were absolutely screwed over in a game against Man City a few weeks ago. Can you just remind us what happened there, and then give us your thoughts on VAR as a whole?
Yeah, it's one that I've been trying to block out, to be honest. It's I was seething about it for days. My poor wife heard me. She couldn't care less about football, and I didn't stop talking about this handball for the next 24 hours, I think. It was just, to your point, these absolutely baffling decisions that are no-brainers. They're clear, absolutely clear decisions that anyone looking at would just go, yep, okay, that's a penalty, or that's a foul, or whatever it may be. And then somehow it does go to VAR, or the person that's working VAR, who doesn't make a call on it. And we're seeing more and more of it. And the one for us, just to remind everyone, was, I can't remember the player from Man City. I forget his name, hence because I've been trying to block it out. But
it was Stones, was it, or Rodri? Was it Rodri?
Rodri. It was Rodri.
Yeah.
So Richarlison's had a shot. It was saved. It's skyrocketed up in the air. Heaps of spin on it. It's bounced. Rodri's miscalculated it. Stuck his arm out, and it's hit him sort of on the bicep. Blatant. Absolutely blatant. Yeah, it wasn't on his hand, but he stuck his arm out. He's gone, oh, geez, that spun. Hit him on the bicep, and then you can see him panic and go, what the hell have I done here? And just booted the ball away. And I remember in the WhatsApp chat with the Everton fans sitting there going, everyone's going, blatant penalty. I'm just like, yes, it is, but I'm not so confident that it's actually going to be called. Just me being the pessimist that I am. And sure enough, that was the case. And to Bobby's point before about it being the best league in the world, best players in the world, fantastic league, why are we not bringing in foreign referees that are the best in the world? Why are we relying on these people that are consistently making bad decisions? I can't fathom it. Like, all this money, surely they can poach better referees for higher cash and or higher salaries, and these referees potentially want that greater exposure as well. Maybe they like sliding flying under the radar as well. But yeah, I just can't understand it. And to the points the two of you were talking about, the Havertz one, I see where you're coming from, Jack, as a neutral. I looked at it and I just go, oh, that could have been a red card. But I guess you see a lot of those where they go either way. There's a lot of inconsistency with those elbow decisions in a heading contest. A lot of the time you'll see a yellow. A lot of the time players don't get penalised whatsoever, and then occasionally you'll see the red as well. So I thought it could have been a red when I looked at it, but I wasn't surprised when it wasn't. But then the one on what was your player's name again?
Murphy, yeah, Jacob Murphy.
Yeah, it couldn't be any more blatant. Like, he's lucky to have his shirt still on his back.
Yeah,
how it wasn't called, I don't understand.
Everton got an apology, didn't they? They got an official apology after that Rodri incident. I think Lampard got a letter or something from the referees. I bet that made him feel better.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was really nice of them. Yeah, we got.
I can tell you where they can stick the apology they're going to send us.
I bet he's got that framed and stuck on his wall.
Oh, seriously, why bother?
Yeah,
it just rubs salt in the wound even more. Like,
and
that's what we got. We got an apology.
I mean, refereeing decisions and controversies have always kind of created interest. So I don't think there was anything really wrong with it before VAR, other than the standard of the officiating. Sometimes refereeing is a very hard job, but it was human, open to interpretation, and it was kind of human error at times, which sometimes went against you and sometimes went for you. But the idea was that VAR would eliminate controversy, because it would make things sort of black and white, factual. Even with the offsides, like last season, it didn't eliminate controversy because they were putting little wiggles in the lines and things. What's it all about?
This has always been the thing with me. It's like, what is the point? If it's not going to get 100% accuracy, then scrap it. Go back to the old way where it was the ref and the linesman. They make the mistakes. You move on. You move on as a fan. Like, if that decision happened and there was no VAR, you'd be abusing the referee. You'd be like, are you blind? But then you'd be like, all right, well, let's move on. You know, it is what it is. The fact that they've got this technology that can right or wrong and then it hasn't been used is what irritates me. And Sharpy will back me up here. We got this VAR technology first in Australia, and we were saying back then, oh no, this is terrible. And the next year, the Premier League had it, and we were like, oh no. So yeah.
I completely agree. And the offside ones infuriate me. Absolutely infuriate me. For all clubs, because it's so inconsistent. And isn't it? It wasn't VAR brought in for the clear and obvious errors. Isn't that sort of what? And you've got to draw these minute little lines, and they might have a little wiggle in them as well. But like, if you can't, my view on it is, if it's that hard to decipher, advantage attacker. It's only should be the blatant. I was
just going to say that. Yeah. We want to. You generally you want to see goals. You want to see excitement in football. And this does kind of take away some of the spontaneity of kind of celebrations at times as well. I remember when Aguero scored against Spurs in the Champions League, and he went absolutely crazy. And then, fair enough, it was the right call, but like by like an armpit or something, he was offside. And then all of that joy and spontaneity is just kind of crushed. So it means you can't really kind of celebrate sometimes as well, which is nice for the fans of the other club when that happens. But it does just add like another layer of kind of something to talk about and controversy, which, let's be honest, might be what media wants anyway. It might be what the internet wants and what social media wants. So it probably is here to stay. But the need to, as you said, Bobby, it's not the technology, it's the people who are operating it that need to get better. Right.
We're going to not have any more moments like the Aguero moment, the greatest moment in sports for me. Like that,
2012.
That was amazing. You're not going to have that again. It's simple as that. So, which is sad because that was, amazing. So, it is what it is.
It's just maybe a case of it's not necessary, but it was brought in as a response to decisions going wrong. But as a football fan, I kind of accept that sometimes you're going to have decisions go against you as well, and it's easier to accept that if it's human error rather than if, like yesterday with the Newcastle game, where there's two layers and you're wondering why the invisible person in VAR didn't tell the ref to go and look at it. So anyway, let's move on. We'll probably will end up talking about this again before the end of the season. I'm absolutely certain. But I'm gonna just. So the game carried on. We should have had a penalty there, which was on 56 minutes, which would have been a thoroughly deserved lead for us at that point if we'd scored the pen. And then we get kind of towards the end of the game, and we're doing well. We've contained Chelsea. They haven't had any shots on target up until the 75th minute, and at no point did we look under severe pressure. We were putting a really big shift in, but we potentially looked more, the more likely to win the game, and that it would have been deserved. Was definitely were worth a point. And then in the 89th minute, Jorginho gets a little bit of space. I think our midfielders were just tired by that point. And he puts in he's a world-class player. He finds Havertz, who has a world-class touch and then a world-class finish. And that's what happens when you're playing against teams like Chelsea. I felt so bad for Dan Burn because he was the one who was supposed to be watching Havertz at that moment. It's the 89th minute. It's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you've just conceded a last-minute winner, a last-minute goal against Chelsea to lose the game and end our unbeaten run, which up to that point was 9 games. So that was the 10th game of Aston. We finally got beaten. A few stats here. So the possession was heavily weighted towards Chelsea, 73-27. They had 8 shots to our 7, 3 shots on target to our 2. More corners, and there was quite a lot of fouls. It was kind of like a bitty kind of game. Bobby, what's your sort of final reflections on the match? Trying to leave aside, if we can, the VAR. I know that there was a lot of people on social media, I was included in this, saying I was very proud of the way the team had performed and the amount of effort they'd put in. And if we're going to lose a game to end this unbeaten run, then that's maybe a good way to lose it while keeping confidence. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think the feeling I had after I got over the shock of conceding in the 89th minute to a guy that shouldn't have been on the pitch was absolute pride in every single one of those blokes that were out there. I think we cast our minds back to early December, and to think that some of those players would even have a role in our team now, and we'd be, in all purposes, safe from relegation, I would have been, you're mad, you're daft. But it's come to a point now where every single one of those players now knows their role, and they're acting like proper Premier League players. And I just had immense pride because I felt we didn't deserve to lose. Chelsea didn't deserve to win. It was at that point of the game where it was like a draw would probably be the fairest result. But if we had won, I thought that would have been another fair result. So with all the injuries, with all the sickness and everything we had a makeshift team. But the fact that Eddie can manufacture these performances away from home against the European champions, my feeling was not of, pity at all. It was, let's get on to Everton. Sorry, Sharpy. It's like, we're pumped now. That's going to hurt. It's going to hurt the boys. Looking at Dan Burn after the game, he would have taken on Everton straight away. He was ready to go. And I think that's the feeling I had as a fan. It's like, all right, dust ourselves off. We're going to right a few wrongs in the next game.
Yeah. And it was nice to see the likes of Sean Longstaff, who hasn't played barely over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Nice to see him step in and play really well. Him and Bruno had only trained together in that system once, because they didn't know that Shelby and Willock were going to be out. Yeah. So that was good. Murphy put in another really good shift. So these are kind of fringe players who, are they championship standard or are they Premier League quality at the moment? Under a good coach, they could play a role for us next season even. And Matt Targett, I thought, had another good game as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot to be kind of hopeful for now that we've got a coach who is drilling these players and what they need to do. And like you, I just feel like I'm looking forward to the Everton game. And was there anything else, Bobby, you wanted to just mention there before we move on to talk about Everton?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all. I think Big Dan Burn, special mention for him. One mistake in the end, and it cost us. But for 89 minutes, he was he's an England international. That guy, he's got to be called up to that squad because I don't think there's another left-footed centre back that's like him. So he's just shown, and I'd be proud if he wore the captain's armband next week if we're lacking a Shelby or a Lascelles.
Yeah, some signing he's been. All right, we will be back after this, and we'll get Sharpy a bit more involved, and we'll talk about Everton v Newcastle. All right, so we've got Everton v Newcastle at Goodison Park coming up on Friday morning, Australia time. This is going to be a little bit difficult for you to watch this, Sharpy. I've got the form table here, and I've got some stats about Everton's recent form and the recent head-to-head between Newcastle and Everton. So I'm gonna just go through these, and then I'll hand over to you, and I'm gonna just ask you what the hell has been going on at Everton over the last little while. But as you can see there, Everton are rock bottom of the form table in 20th, and they've lost 7 of the last 8 games, and Newcastle are up there in second, which is nice for us. Not nice reading for Everton. I want to just concentrate really on the form since we played our game last month. So the last game was on February the 8th, which was just after the transfer window. So Newcastle won that one 3-1. Everton immediately bounced back after that and beat Leeds 3-0, which must have been a very positive. It was a very positive response to that defeat at Newcastle. But since then, the fixes haven't been the easiest, but there's been a 2-0 defeat to Southampton. There's been a 1-0 defeat to Man City, which we talked about before with that controversial VAR call. There was the 5-0 against Spurs. I've got to admit, Sharpy, I was worried for your well-being after this game. I was texting Bobby saying, Sharpy hasn't tweeted what's going on. I haven't heard, nobody's heard from him. I said, text him and make sure he's all right. That was really, I watched the highlights of that, and that was all over the place. And then last night, there was a defeat to Wolves there as well. We've talked about Newcastle's form plenty. So that defeat yesterday was our first in 10 games. We've been flying high. And let's just look at the little head-to-head before I come to you, Sharpy. So I want to just point out the Goodison results. So since Newcastle got promoted, there's been 4 games. Newcastle have won 1 of them, which was last season. There's been 2 draws, and there's been 1 win for Everton. And at St James's Park, we've been pretty on top there as well. So the kind of form is in our favour. Sharpy, what's going on with Everton? What is going on? What's happened? How is a squad that looks on the paper to be good? We know football's not played on paper, but how has it come to this where Everton are, staring relegation in the face, or they're in a real scrap?
Yeah, I'd love to know. You look at the squad, and to your point, Jack, there's plenty of talent at our disposal. Look great on paper. The back 4 is questionable for mine. We don't have a strong defence at the moment. I think Jamie Carragher might have come out off the back of the Tottenham game and said we've got a championship back 4, which I don't really disagree with. Like, Michael Keane's been quite rubbish for the last 12 months or so, 18 months. To your point, Bobby, about Dan Burn going and playing in England. Well, Michael Keane's played for England, so I can't see any reason as to why Dan Burn wouldn't. Mason Holgate, he's been stepping in for Ben Godfrey and Yerry Mina. Godfrey's back now, but then Seamus Coleman, he's just not what he used to be, unfortunately. And Mikolenko, jury's still out on him for mine. And I remember when we were chatting a few weeks back, like, to me, we sold Luca Dean, who I know he hurt himself overnight playing for Villa, but he was such a creative force on that left-hand side. And Mikolenko, I don't want to shit-can a player that he's yet to prove himself. He's young. He's come from a foreign country. But to me, I'm just like, he played for Dynamo Kiev in Ukraine. are always one of the strongest, if not the strongest team. So he's always going to be looking good domestically. Very easy to defend when you're playing for the best team. And yeah, he played Champions League, but how many players, like you've seen players come to the A-League that have played Champions League, doesn't necessarily mean they're a gun player. So he hasn't done a lot to impress me yet. So I think it's a back line that's really our problem. But also, I don't want to go too hard on Frank too early. And I'm certainly not one of those ones that goes, oh, it's a manager. But there has been a lot of chopping and changing in the lineup, in the way we line up, in our strategy. And I guess that's got to do with players at his disposal and injuries and unavailabilities, which makes it hard. So I think our forwards, there's a lot of talent there. I think we're falling down. Our back line's not standing up, but also our midfield's been pretty weak, pretty poor.
I was listening to Lampard from his interview that he did last night after the game, and actually he did this after the Spurs game as well. And he was saying things about how he doesn't have a magic wand, and that the players are in a rut, stuck in a rut from before he got there, and that they just need to work hard. And I just couldn't help thinking, this is like, he sounds a bit like Steve Bruce when he was with Newcastle, you know? Like you said, you don't want to get on him too early. He's working with limited resources, and he's trying to find his best team and his best setup maybe. But how is he kind of being perceived at the moment? Is it just sort of he's been dealt a rough hand and he's doing his best with it, and he's going to be given patience, and maybe even in the event of relegation if that happens? Or are the fans more focused on the ownership, which they have been, or what's kind of the view on Lampard so far?
Yeah, from what I've seen and from a lot of the feedback I see on social media, everyone's just loving his honesty. He's not trying to bullshit anyone, and he's not sitting there trying to fool us that we're in a better position than we are, or vice versa. He's looking at it going, well, this is a scenario. It is what it is. In all dealings with the media, in all these press conferences, there's been nothing but brutal honesty, which it's refreshing. You don't see it. There's a lot of games that go on in press conferences with most managers and the like, and he's going, okay, it is what it is. These results haven't been ideal, even after the Leeds win. He was, yeah, it's great, we've won, but there's still a lot of work to do, and not getting ahead of himself. But he's also not sitting there going and panicking. Like, yes, obviously the 5-0 drubbing from Tottenham certainly was not ideal. But even overnight, losing 1-0 to Wolves, it's not great. We're not in a great position, but we still have time to turn it around. I think we've still got 12 or 13 games. So there's still plenty of time up our sleeve, up his sleeve to try and change that form. And yeah, it's just the honesty and the cool, calm head on his shoulders, where he's actually sitting there and he speaks really well. I guess anyone can speak well. Hopefully he can manage well as well. But it's certainly a nice change to Rafa, in my opinion, and it looks as though a lot of the fans are on board with it as well. Although after last night, we're seeing a couple of those, the ones that all clubs have, bob up, start calling for his head and blaming him.
Yeah, it happens everywhere, yeah. It happened at Newcastle a little bit after the Cambridge game and the Watford game. People were giving Howe a little bit of grief. So they need patience, don't the managers? How are you supposed to turn things around in such a short space of time? And unfortunately for Frank, he might end up running out of time a little bit. But you're still out of the relegation zone. And like you said, there's still 13 games to go. And this is a massive game for Everton coming up on Friday morning at Goodison Park against one of the few teams that they've still got to play that are around them, because I know that there's a very difficult run-in coming up as well. Talk us through this lineup then. Me and Bobby, last time we did this, we looked at the Everton lineup and we got very, very worried. And then the game started, and at half-time we're like, what were we worried about? But yeah, talk us through this lineup you've got here. Is it a bit easier this time to predict what the team might be?
I think so. So John Joe Kenny got sent off last night. He was playing centre back. His form since Lampard's came in has been actually half decent. It's been okay. He seemed to have taken his opportunity before last night. And I didn't watch any of the Tottenham game. I fortunately missed it. I was on the road. Going back to the earlier point, I was on the road, saw the result, and I go, yeah, well, there's no point watching any of that. I'm not going to put myself through it. So, he's going to be out, and I guess assuming that Coleman's not going to be replaced by young Patterson, who we brought in from Rangers, it'll be Keane or Holgate, Godfrey and Mikolenko, and that's what I kind of hope for, is a back four. Playing at home, we need to go all guns blazing, and in my opinion, we need to have a three-man midfield. So we've been overrun, I should say, in midfield a fair bit recently this season, especially when Rafa was in charge. Consistently just had a two-man midfield, and we're just getting smashed in the middle of the park. So I'm hoping. So Alan was on the bench. Doucouré and Van der Beek didn't play great overnight. From all reports, I only watched a bit of the game while feeding the baby. And then the goal came, and we weren't offering much. And I go, no, I'm not staying up for this.
Back to bed.
Yeah, not today. And so I think we need a three-man midfield. We need Allen to anchor it, to try and cut out those attacks, but also be an option to pass the ball to coming out of defence. But I think we just need that three in the middle of the park. And I don't think Calvert-Lewin's going to be ready. He was ill. I don't know what that actually means, how ill he was. Richarlison offered a lot up front overnight. He's actually, without scoring, he gives his all every match. He's not as flashy as a lot of Brazilians, but he's an absolute workhorse, and you can rely on him. So I think with Gray back, who again wasn't great overnight, but once he gets some match fitness and some miles in his legs, he was awesome for us at the start of the year. So Gray and Gordon's being an absolute shining light on the season. The only real positive to take out of the season coming out of the academy, and he's just takes a game on, and is always looking to go forward, always looking to try and take on his man and whip the ball in and shoot when on site. So he's been really, really refreshing. So I look at that. I'm not sure about what we're going to do in the midfield. That's where I'm really unsure. And then whether Keane starts or if Holgate starts. I'm not confident on either, but it'll be one of the two.
What's going on with Dele Alli?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Skill, I guess, does it come flow on from his time at Tottenham, where he just was out of form and couldn't get in? Like, he hasn't had much of an opportunity. He's just coming in off the bench, and when he's come off the bench, he's showed little glimpses, but he hasn't really taken the bull by the horns and really demanded a starting position. And especially when you look at how poor we've been, you'd like to think he's certainly had every opportunity to do that. So, yeah, answer your question, I'm not quite sure, but he hasn't shown a heap as of yet.
Yeah, he was signed by Lampard, wasn't he? Lampard kind of pushed for him, sort of ex-England internationals who could maybe try and get him back to his best. But it just does feel like there's something going on with him, sort of maybe in his personal life or something that's really affected him, because he was so good for a period when he was in his early 20s. So hopefully for Everton, he will start getting some minutes, but hard to know, isn't it, if that's going to happen?
It's hard, yeah, and what sort of system he fits into as well, because he's one that you'd want right up next to the striker, that second striker role almost, or attacking mid. And I guess in our current form, whether a style that allows someone to play in that sort of position, or a formation that allows someone to play in that position, is something that we can go with. I don't know if we necessarily can at the moment, so he'd almost have to fit in a spot out wide. Or play a bit deeper, which doesn't suit him.
All right, thanks for that, Sharpy. Let's have a look at the Bobby's predicted Newcastle team. This is probably quite difficult at the minute, Bobby, because we don't know who's fit or who's injured or who's sick, or we don't really know what's that three in the middle's been broken up. That was so successful for us. So talk us through this team. What do you think? How do you think we might set up, and what do you think the personnel might be?
Yeah, this is based on the fact that a few of the illness guys are back and fit, and I wonder if a few of the illnesses were just to keep them prepared for this game. We've had a pretty major fixture list over the past few weeks, so getting Willock back in the midfield will be great. ASM, I half expect Murphy will start, to be honest. He's done the job for us, even defensively as well. When ASM came on against Chelsea, I noted that he wasn't tracking back as much and left more gaps in the midfield. So, that'll be an interesting one as well. But I think against an Everton side low of confidence, have St. Maximin running at that defence, which is where an area that I've just circled and gone, we've got to be able to, with John Joe Kenny being sent off, we've got two centre-backs that aren't in great form. And last time, St. Maximin absolutely scared the living Jesus out of him. So I think if it's a good chance to have him running at them and causing all issues. Big Joe back will make such a difference. I'm really looking forward to having Joe Linton next to Bruno. We haven't really seen that yet. I think that's the combination that we're going to see going forward. The Brazilian mastery there of Big Joe doing what he does, covering every blade of grass and bullocking a lot of midfielders. And the other thing I've noted here with the midfield, and Sharpy may disagree, but the Everton midfield seems very slow, very not as athletic as some. And I think it's an area where Joe, Linton, Bruno, and Willock can exploit their run, their athleticism, and their fitness might be another one where we can overcrowd them in the midfield. So, yeah, well, as you said, it's hard to predict. I've got big Dan Burn as the captain. I think he deserves it in that squad, and I'd love to give him the honour of captaining his Boyd side as well, because he deserves it after his performances. But yeah, I think that's the best team we could sort of have available to right now.
So you think we'll switch from the kind of 3-5 at the back that we did against Chelsea for this game and go back to the 4-3-3 that's been working?
Yeah, and I think that's the system that Eddie liked. That's the system that got us the 9 undefeated games. And I think Everton are going to be jittery the first 15 minutes. And I think that's where we have to come out and do what we do with other teams and just put the pressure on, really press them high. I think this system allows us to do it the best way. So I think the Chelsea game was out of necessity more with the illnesses and the injuries and it being Chelsea. And I think this is where we play our best football in this sort of format. And Everton, no offence, Sharpy, but not great form. So a team that we can sort of boss a little bit. I think he'll revert back to this system.
It's interesting. I saw Joe Linton there and I just smiled straight away. I think he will be fit again. I think he had half a training session before Chelsea. They probably wanted to keep him for this. I don't think because against Southampton, he wasn't there, and we switched quite early from the 4-3-3 to a 4-2-3-1. So I think maybe Joe Linton is integral to that 4-3-3 system.
Absolutely.
And it's again the weekly episode of who would have ever thought we'd be saying this about Joe Linton, even 3 or 4 months ago. But he does make that system work, doesn't he? Because he's got that energy and he's the destroyer in the middle of the park there. It'll be interesting to see who out of, because you assume that Bruno is going to be playing most games now from the start with his quality. So it's going to be either Willock or Shelvey who does drop out if we're going to stick with that 3 in midfield. It's a good problem to have, Longstaff had a good game as well against Chelsea. But he will be back on the bench, you would assume. So, and it would be lovely to see Dan Burn with the captaincy. And I think you're right, looking at the team, maybe only potentially Dubravka, maybe, or maybe even Joe Linton might be competition for captaincy.
Yeah,
but
look at it.
What a moment that would be for Dan Burn. So, I don't know, Sharpy, do you look at that team and think, are you getting a little bit scared like we were when last time out when we didn't need to be scared?
I don't know if scared's the right word. Yeah, you certainly didn't need to be scared last time. I like the fact that you were, but I was certainly not as turned on by our team as you guys were. But I look, the form Newcastle have been in is just outrageous. You've just been playing unbelievable football, and like, again, only watching snippets of the match last night against Chelsea, like you were just polar opposites to where you were 3 months ago or whatever. And so I don't know. Our form's just horrible. It's probably more that's scaring me than necessarily your team. Newcastle form's been unreal though on the flip side. So it's probably a combination of both. Everton, with our squad, when we're normally, when I say normally, maybe last season, playing some reasonable football, I'd look at it and go, be a good match. Now, just, I'm going, geez, I wonder if we can pull a rabbit out of the hat somehow, and maybe get a couple of VAR decisions go our way. It might be all that we need.
Yeah, it's a bit disconcerting for Newcastle fans actually being confident going into tough away games at places like Goodison Park. It's not something that I'm going to be getting used to. I think it's going to take quite a while before I get kind of comfortable with sort of predicting wins in these games. Let's just have a little look at the league table as well. Sorry, Sharpy.
Yeah,
but okay. Let's have a look. Everton are 17th, so 22 points. Watford pulled out a good win against Southampton yesterday. So the same amount of points, but Everton have got a better goal difference and have played 3 games less. So that's pretty important there. Burnley had gone on a little bit of a run, but now they've lost 3 on the bounce. Leeds beat Norwich in the last minute yesterday. They conceded in the 92nd minute, and then they scored in the 94th minute. And Newcastle were up there in 14th, we're 9 points ahead of Everton, having played 2 games more. So Everton have got a few games in hand, which is definitely positive to look at there. I guess, like you were just saying, though, the form is not good at all. How do you feel when you look at that league table, Sharpy?
Yeah, not great. Not great at all. Like games in hand are great, right? But you've got to be able to win them or get something out of them. I would have preferred. I remember when games were being postponed prior to Christmas because of COVID and the like. And even though our form wasn't great then, still much would have preferred to have played those games then, as opposed to now. So I've got mates who go, no, I'm still confident we're not going to go down. Whereas, again, myself being a bit of a pessimist when it comes to my sporting teams, I look at it and I just go, geez, it's not great. We should be able, we've got games in hand against a lot of the lower half clubs, especially, I won't say because I'll probably get one wrong, but one's right down the bottom as well in the relegation zone. So there's certainly opportunities there to grab some points. And we might only need 4 wins out of those 12 games. But where are those 4 wins going to come from? I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think personally we're at the points tally that Watford, Burnley and Norwich, particularly, Norwich are gone, but those 3 teams won't get, I can't see any of those 3 teams getting 31 points. So you look at Everton and you think, well, is there 9 points in there? Is there 3 wins in the next 12 games or 13 games that you can get? And I think this one on Friday is one that you'd circle and say, look, coming up, there's a few bad fixtures, but this is one we need the 3 points from. So, it's interesting. I think Watford with Roy Hodgson are always a little bit of a danger, but I don't see that bottom 3 is pretty rank, to be honest.
The relegation battle, isn't it, though? You just never know what could happen. Sunderland have done the escape. Leicester did it and then went and won the league next season. But there does always tend to be a team that kind of puts a run together. Watford, well, they've had a good win yesterday, but the form before that wasn't good. So, and I don't think Leeds are fully out of it either. They kind of scraped a win yesterday, and their form was pretty much as bad as Everton's before that game. Brentford have pulled out a couple of wins. It's just it's very hard to predict what might happen down there. And it would be a big shock, I think, for the Premier League if a club the size of Everton got relegated. We've experienced that twice. Aston Villa have done it. Leeds have done it. Do you think Everton are kind of set up if they do go down, Sharpy, or do you think they could be completely screwed financially?
I don't know enough about our finances, but I don't think they haven't instilled a lot of confidence in terms of having to deal with financial fair play and the like with our finances. So having looked at some of that, without knowing a lot, I look at it and go, geez, I reckon we could be in a bit of strife. Like, we've got a new stadium being built. How are we going to fund that and attract the dollars, the sponsorship dollars and the like to justify that? Does that then just get scrapped? Like, it's already started. So, like, things like that. I think we'd be in some form of strife. As to how much, I don't know.
Yeah, and the Premier League really, it's funny for fans of opposing clubs when clubs go down, but I think the Premier League benefits from having bigger clubs in it. I'm a little bit unusual for a Newcastle fan, and that I think that the Premier League would be good. It'd be good for the region if Sunderland and Middlesbrough were in the Premier League as well. Good for the region. Look at Bobby shaking his head. But I think the Premier League is stronger when the bigger kind of clubs are there. So although it's funny to see big clubs struggling, I think as a product, who wants to have like Fulham yo-yoing or West Brom yo-yoing all the time, or Norwich, I think as a product, it's better when the bigger clubs are up there.
And to the bigger point is, you don't want to see a club like Derby, what they're going through. You don't want Derby out of existence. No matter what you think of them, you don't want a club like that with a history, and they're a big club. I think they're a Premier League club, but you don't want them to go out of existence. And on Sharpy's earlier point, when Newcastle went down, we were run by Mike Ashley on a shoestring budget, so we were sort of able to go to the championship, and our finances were okay. He was running us as a profit. Everton had been chasing Champions League, throwing the money, and so this will be a sizable shift for them. So it's not the same situation, similar sized clubs, but we were run by a shoestring budget of Mike Ashley, whereas the ownership of Everton have tried to chase Champions League and spent the money. So it could be catastrophic, but there's still a few games to go before we pencil that in.
Yeah, and it just reminds me a little bit of on that point, Bobby, your Portsmouth and your QPRs back in the day when they did similar. Found some money, went mental, had a field day, buying players for stupid amounts of money, and we've done similar. So I think if we do go down, we might be in a bit of strife. Unfortunately,
it kind of brings us back, doesn't it, to what we're talking about at the beginning about who owners of football clubs who just, it doesn't matter who they are or where the money's from. If they don't know what they're doing, then it can lead to catastrophic consequences. And it is catastrophic for people because it's the fans that get hurt at the end of the day. The fans are the ones who suffer, and the fans are the ones who deserve to suffer the least, And most football fans are still kind of working class people. They love the club. They love the club is part of the community, and it's sad for anyone when they go down. But yeah, it would be worrying, I think, with the finances. So let's hope for your sake, Sharpy, that doesn't happen. But let's hope that you start winning after you've played Newcastle this week. Let's have some predictions for the game then. I'm gonna go against my usual cautious. My usual cautious sort of pessimism. I think we're going to win 3-1 again. I just think we've got so much confidence, and we've got players coming back who will be fit, and I think Everton is so low on confidence that I think we could have a good win. Bobby?
I've gone for a 2-0 win. We've been one of the best defensive teams the past 10 weeks, and I just don't see how Everton break us down to score, and I think we'll get a couple of goals. I'll say Willock and Big Joe will power one in.
Sharpy?
I'm going to try and be optimistic, and by optimistic, a 1-1 draw.
It's crazy, honestly. Yeah, it's crazy. Newcastle fans, like as I said, like it's going to take some getting used to us to actually feel confident, and we'll probably have egg on our face after this. I wouldn't be surprised if we went and lost. It's just what we do, and it's still a hard away game at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's not a certainty, is it? It's not like one I'm thinking, we've won this. I think there's an opportunity there, and I think it's a game we should be confident because of the form, but I wouldn't be surprised if we lose. Like, Goodison's a hard place to go, and their teams battling down the bottom. Who knows?
That should be tattooed on every Newcastle fan. I wouldn't be surprised if we lose.
If it helps, I can relate to that.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us again, Sharpy, and listening to us have our little rant earlier, or a couple of rants that we had. It's been really good having you on again, and we'll hopefully get you on again next season.
My pleasure, boys. Thank
Friend
you
of the
again for having me.
podcast.
You're an
Absolutely.
official friend of the pod, yeah. You've made that
Fantastic.
status.
I'll look forward to my t-shirt or cap.
Stubby coolers, actually. We've ordered some stubby coolers today.
That will do.
Bobby, thanks very much. I will speak to you soon.
Jack. Definitely.
Don't forget to look at the Tune Under Pod website, tuneunder.com. Like, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at TuneUnderPod. We're also on Facebook. We'll be back. I think it will be next weekend for a review of the Everton game. And then we don't have a game after that for a little while, so there might be a little break, or we might see what we can do to fill the time. Cheers, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, boys.
See you guys.